Hello everyone and welcome back to another showcase, a long overdue showcase and video. I hope you enjoyed the little intro montage. This time around we have Captain Mew Mew's Meissa. I don't know, it's a fairly simple name, but I feel like it could be pronounced in a bunch of different ways. Anyway, before I move on with the review, I just want to say that I'm temporarily closing submissions because I need to catch up. I have a bunch of them, and these are not the most popular videos also. So, I'm taking my time. I think it's fine. Might reopen the submissions later, but for now, I'm not going to take more. Anyway, and now for the review. I'm going to start with the cons as usual. And you are seeing this thing stand perfectly still, but it usually doesn't because the standard version, or rather the version I was sent in, relies entirely on AI PIDs. And the AI PIDs, well, they turn off if you turn off the movement, which makes it fall in the water. And this thing sinks. And that's my first con, actually. This thing sinks like a rock. If it touches the water, for whatever reason, it's gone. It has no way to get back in the air or get out of the water. Yeah, this is a brick when it touches the water. That's just it. Anyway, so that's the first con. The next thing is the gun. The gun is actually, I'm going to talk about it in the pros, but there's a few things about it that are, could be improved. And the first thing is it's a little sneaky. If we look under here, what are those? Oh yeah. So this thing is a little bit heretical. It abuses the fact that some of the larger blocks don't check for collisions across their entire size, basically. Mostly only the source block, where it attaches with other things. So yeah, it's a little heretical, but that's entirely unnecessary, actually, because if you look at the tooltip right now, you can see, while it does lack the recoil absorption, it doesn't have enough. It also has a lot more cooling than it needs. And if we take a look at the Tetris closer, it's going to be pretty hard to see with the tooltip, so I'm actually going to turn the UI off. But right here, this is connectors, and this could really easily be coolers. And given it already has too many coolers, this means that the center part of the gun could have just basically maybe like one line of coolers up and down or something like that, or just alternating lines of coolers and have a bunch of recoil absorbers in the middle instead. And that would entirely prevent the need for this. And it would allow for more cooling, or not cooling, but recoil absorption on average. Just overall, I'm pretty sure it could, we could get there a full 20,000 per second. But otherwise, the gun is pretty much fine. The turret cap is a little bit smaller than I'd like. It's a blessing and a curse, right? It's a smaller target, but it's also not strongly armored, which means that, it could get blown off. If it gets hit, it could get blown off, and this thing's damage is mostly the APS, and that's it. There's no other APS on this vehicle. So if that goes, that's pretty much it. So, the gun is a bit of a gamble. It's a double-edged sword. The next thing is the defenses. It does have, where are they? Right here. Missile interceptors. That's a very small amount for a vehicle of this size. It does have shields. The shields are pretty decent, actually. They're well placed. This is a front sider, by the way. so the shields are pretty good. It defends, the whole front is covered, part of the side is covered. It's pretty difficult to get around the shields. The armor is fine. It's not overkill for something that's a front-sider. So if we take a quick look, the front might get blown off a little bit easier than you might think. There's a bit of a heavy armor, but this whole part is mostly metal. It has a few gaps in there, I think. Not too many. Well, actually, not gaps, but there are functional components in there. And yeah, mostly metal, not full blocks, so the front is likely to get blown off all the way down to this line of heavy armor, at least if it's facing something similar in strength to itself. But then there's a fair amount of heavy armor, so you know, not too bad. The profile is pretty small from the front, so you know, again, double-edged sword kind of, because that also means it's a hard target, but what can be hit is only decently-ish armored. There's no lambs, and there's no sea whiz either. So this thing is very hittable. It's very possible to hit it with missiles. There's very little challenge. There's some smoke, so you know, lasers aren't an instant win against it. Packs are packs, you know, particle accelerator cannons. Nothing much you can do. But yeah, for something of this cost, you know, 400,000 materials, it's a bit light on defenses. Not my style. And finally, the last con is just the belly missiles. Those do not have torpedo propellers, not even secondary torpedo propellers. Those are straight missiles, yet they fire from the bottom, and this thing doesn't hover very high, and in fact it does drop its missiles in the water. Now, in relatively calm waters, the missiles will float up and fly away just fine most of the time, but if there were waves, it would be a pretty big problem for the missiles. Granted, the missiles aren't a huge part of this thing's offense, but you know, why waste it, right? Alright, and now for the pros. And I'm gonna go back straight to the gun because this thing is a 100mm rapid fire kinetic gun with, and you know, 100mm is fairly low gauge, and that's just a sensible choice because this is extremely hard to defend against. Sure, shields can bounce some of the shells, but otherwise it's pretty small and relatively high HP, so that makes it very hard to deal with lambs. The shells are fast, so aside from small planes, you're very likely to get hit, and you know, it's just gonna grind away. It's maybe not, you know, the most meta thing you can do because the damage, the initial damage is very low. It's not burst damage. It's not gonna penetrate something that's heavily armored on the first shot, but it's gonna grind things down real quick. And so under a few seconds, depending on, you know, what you're shooting at, it's gonna start hurting, and it's gonna keep hurting, and there's pretty much nothing you can do to avoid it unless you're very small and very fast. So that's a very sound choice. And you know, I was commenting on the Tetris earlier. While it's not perfect, it's not horrible either. And speaking of the gun, even though this thing doesn't have, you know, a lot of support weapons, it could be disarmed. The offense on this thing is great. And I was talking about the defense as well. And this is a very clear example of, you know, having a good offense is a good defense, because a lot of unavoidable damage means this thing is very likely to kill whatever it's facing quite quickly. And if that happens, then you know you don't need to be taking a lot of damage. So that's a very solid design choice. And then this thing is just quite mobile. If I press the button for the main drive. I guess it's not bound, but if I let it move, this thing is quite fast. Now, it doesn't really abuse its speed in combat, although it can, sort of. It's not necessarily programmed to do it. The AI is not set up to dodge. But since it's that fast, if you move around it very fast, it's going to follow you and it's going to move just about as erratically as you do. And the speed is also great for, say, the campaign, because obviously that means just good positioning and the ability to pick your fights, which is great. Speed is always good. So again, a great choice. And finally, I know I say that a lot about most of the things sent in to me, but that's just because, you know, a lot of them do fit the bill, and that's that it looks great. It is really nice looking, actually. For the best example, or at least one of the things that I like the most about it, is just how the engines were done. I think those are muzzle brakes. I might actually steal some of those little decoration tricks, because that is just very nice. The gun also nicely futuristic and sleek. Love it. Paint job, of course, it's heavily inspired from the Scarlet Dawn. I think it's actually a fan build of the Scarlet Dawn. Don't look for it in the campaign. It's not in the campaign, but yeah, it looks great aside from this little thing. But you know, you have to look to see it. And yeah, it's just great great work on the shaping of the hull as well. It's just awesome. And the gun, absolutely very satisfying. I don't know if I can, yep. Yeah. There we go. So just a very satisfying craft. It's quite my style. I wouldn't necessarily call this a hover tank. It kind of fits the bill. It has a singular main gun that's key to the vehicle. It's a bit larger than, you know, the gun does not necessarily dominate the silhouette. I would call it a hover tank, or at least pretty close to the way I would go about making a hover tank. So bonus points there. So that's it. That was Captain Mew Mew's Meissa. Very nice vehicle. Again, if you were looking to send something in, you're gonna have to hold off on that. I am just not gonna look for now because, again, I have too many for now. I need to catch up. So thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.